Afternoon, everybody, and thanks for tuning in. John Kelly, profiler here, and welcome. Welcome today. We're going to have a very, very interesting show for you. We're going to be focusing on the mystery of suicide and depression. I don't know, we got a lot behind that, and I'm very lucky to have somebody on here today. I'm going to introduce him in a minute. He's been a colleague of mine for over 20 years and is an expert in the field of depression. He's written a couple of books. I'm going to mention them to you. First of all, I want to bring out that we have another channel called Thrive. If you have any kind of addictive illness in your house, please feel free to go to Thrive. It's free, it's open, it's on YouTube. It's John Kelly's Thrive. It's focused on addictive illness. There's some good educational videos on there because we know that addictive illness can really be tearing a family apart and really causing a loved one to self-destruct, especially in these times of COVID. So please feel free to go and check out our free channel on YouTube, which is Thrive. Also, we'll have a link up above for our webinar. We'll have a webinar that we're putting together. If you want to sign up, we'll get you some information. All we need is your email, and we'll give you information on our webinar. Hopefully that'll be going off within maybe the next month. And hopefully it'll turn into a series. We want to see how much interest you guys have in our webinar and give us different topics that you might be interested in. You know, today I am honored to have on Leo Battenhausen. As I said in the beginning, Leo has been a colleague of mine for over 25 years. I've had the honor to work with him. He is not only one of the best counselors I know, one of the finest psychotherapists I know, but Leo is also published. He has been published. He has been published in, the field of psychotherapy on depression. He is a specialist in depression. He has also written Social Side, How America is Loving Itself to Death. And we're going to have pictures of his books up so you can take a look at them. You'll see his books. I recommend them highly. Also, one book that really grabbed at me, and I think it's very important read, and it's called Soul Doubt. I'm sorry, Soul Doubt. Soul Doubt, like you're doubting your soul. I think it's a very, very important book. And for anybody that's having any kind of mental health problems, especially depression, it's something to take a look at. I now want to introduce Leo Battenhausen. He is a licensed alcohol and drug counselor in New Jersey. He is a licensed clinical social worker in New Jersey. As I said earlier, he's a fantastic social worker. He's a fantastic psychotherapist. And again, it's been my privilege to work with him for over 20 years. He can also be found at various websites, leojbatt at AOL.com or psychologytoday.com or goodtherapytoday.com. So you can find Leo Battenhausen, Leo, at any of those websites, okay? Any of those .coms, you'll be able to contact Leo if you have any questions. Again, I can't tell you again, and I'm repeating myself, but I'm just really excited to have him here today because he's such a great researcher, author, and great psychotherapist. With all that being said, Leo, right? How are you?
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that. But I'm doing very well, thanks, in these trying times. And
Yeah.
I'm honored to be on your program. I've been watching it, and I'm a big supporter of yours, as you know, and I love the work you're doing. And I think this is an excellent time to talk about some of the things we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
And I would appreciate the time, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, when you look at depression, right, and you look at suicide, and you're really the expert here. I mean, how do you see this thing we call as suicide? I mean, you said something earlier That was very interesting to me. What is the mystery? I mean, who's looking into it? What is the mystery, behind suicide? Why are younger, older, middle class people killing themselves? Leo, we got 48,000 people killed in 2018 that killed themselves. They killed themselves in 2018. In 2018, it was the 10th leading cause of death. The 10th leading cause of death. Leo, this isn't even 2019. We've passed 2019. We don't have any statistics from 2019. We're into 2020, and like you've said, it's gotten worse because of this pandemic and lockdown and all this other stuff. Go ahead, talk about it.
Thank you. And I think more people need to be talking about this. We hear about the illnesses and the isolation and the hospitalizations, all of the medical factors of this, but we're not talking about the outside effects of the mental, the emotional, social, and personal damage this has been doing. You talk about suicides on the rise, John. This actually per capita, there's been more deaths from suicide since this pandemic started than there have from COVID deaths. But we don't hear this. But there's something that's not working here. Of course, this type of pandemic is taking away a lot of the things we need as human beings. Socialization and being with other people. This is a basic human need, and I mean that's part of depression as well when you're in a normal situation. But we're talking about being isolated, kind of forced into this. So we have nothing left to do but be alone and let this thing fester and exacerbate, and it's getting worse. So we're seeing so many things, so many deaths from this, and it's not being resolved. And nobody really talks about that, and I think in tech generally, we don't really, a lot of research is not being done on why people, make that decision to kill themselves and check out of this world. It does get that bad. It's a physical pain that people are trying to relieve. It comes to that. It's a physical pain. I guess people would not understand unless they have felt it. And we can talk about depression, and which of course I think is the preliminary to any suicide. We have the lack of self-worth, the lack of meaning, the lack of feeling needed, the lack of feeling appreciated, the lack of having a reason, purpose in this world. So now that we're being isolated and things like this, trying to get through this on our own, we can hear the news and they tell us what we need to do to stay safe, to keep ourselves alive, but we're not talking about the emotional destruction behind all of that. And that's what people need to hear. Where's the hope in this? Is what my hope in this is to at least reach out to some people and give them some hope, because there is hope. Suicide is called, as you may know, they say it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
A permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Absolutely.
I hope all you folks out there listening to this, because this is gospel. Okay, a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Because these thoughts that are coming, they're coming from left field, man, and they're creating your feelings of what? Hopelessness, worthlessness. Go ahead, Leo.
Yes, hopelessness, worthlessness, lack of self-esteem. You can speak to that. That's more of your ballpark than mine. And self-esteem is the most vital thing, I think, in any healthy person's emotional being. You got to feel good about yourself. Of course, people with depression and suicide don't. They just can't. They just don't see they don't find any way out. And that's the sad part of this pandemic right now. Is this is an added piece that is getting very little airtime, and I hope to see more research being done on it. Because I envision this thing, John, and I was thinking about you and your serial killing and your profiling background and expertise. This thing is like this hidden, this invisible serial killer. You know what I'm saying?
That's what he's right.
The cops are asleep, and this thing could come around and kill everybody. And it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. How do you figure this out when you can't even? How do you profile suicide? You know, how did that happen? Sorry about my dog. How do you profile suicide?
Good doggies, good doggy. Our
What are you
fans
doing
love
more?
dogs. Our fans love dogs and cats.
They get excited.
Sure they do.
I'm sorry.
It's fine.
But I've thought about you, because we don't. What are the factors involved? What pushes a person, and this is a lot of what I think about and do research in, what pushes a person to that point where they want to check out, and how do you know, you do profiling of serial killers. How do we profile this? And it's a psychological, I guess it's like a mental health profiling of this illness. And that's where, my curiosity lies. How do we get a hold of this thing and predict where it is next, who's it going to be next? What can stop it? You can't arrest it. You catch the serial killer and put him in jail. You can't do it with this. So, that's where a lot of people need to hear they're not alone. And that's another big piece of this, too. You're not alone with this. So, what do you think? Is it a profiling issue? Could you see this as a serial killer? Would it fit the definition of a serial killer?
Right.
I think it could.
It does, it does. I mean, I think that suicide and depression, okay, are one of death's best friends. I really believe that, okay? I really believe that depression is one of death's best friends because it leads to suicide. I mean, I don't know of anybody that's committed suicide that has not been depressed.
No, you're right.
When we're looking for a serial killer, we're looking for somebody with history. We're looking for somebody with risk factors. So why don't you talk about what some of the warning signs or risk factors are? You know better than I do. As you become the profiler to, detect, how we can, grab this serial killer before he claims a life. Like prevention, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? So how do we identify somebody who's at risk of being killed by this serial killer or this thing, as we would say, a disorder that, is going to kill someone?
I'd like to talk about that. I think when my book, Social Side, How America's Loving Itself to Death.
Fantastic book.
Thank you. I really enjoyed writing that. And it's funny to see that I wrote that some 6-7 years ago, to see it progressing in the news and all of these places. But what I focused on in that is how we're becoming less. Technology is supposed to bring us easier life and make things more convenient and make our lives better. I don't see that happening. I see the opposite happening. It's making us less dependent on being with others and having these, it's called the virtual world, right? The definition of virtual is not really is not as advertised, so to speak. It's fake. So we have these virtual relationships, virtual friends, and we start relying on those instead of getting out and being around other people. But the best solution to fight depression is to be with other people, be helpful to other people, have yourself be with people who support your self-esteem. Being with people and socializing is so important. And in this world, we see less and less and less of that. And this pandemic thing is just encapsulating that even more, pushing it forward. So that is a warning. So, I see that ever since the technology has taken over the website and the social medias of things. So especially with the younger generation, this has become the reality. Their self-esteem is virtual with likes, and if I don't get liked, they can very, very much become subject to suicide, and they do. They kill themselves over little things of not being liked on a computer. That's not real life, John. It is only real life that gets killed. So that's part of it. We have to keep our kids socializing in real life, and limit the virtual time on online. I think that we know that that's already been documented somewhere. Now, for the rest, for the adults, we're subject to it too. Adults looking at their friends on Facebook or wherever else on social media, seeing them having this wonderful life on these vacations. Oh, my grandchildren, look at all of this. And then there's people who don't have that. That is very depressing to a lot of people. They believe this. Now, we don't even know if that's real. You can put anything on social media, and people will see it and it'll affect them. I don't have that. I'm not getting that. That's not my life. Oh my God, I wish I had that. They're comparing. We keep comparing, and that's a very unhealthy thing to do, and it feeds depression. So it's probably one of the worst things to do is to compare ourselves to others. We have what we have. We have blessings, but we don't count them enough. We have good things going on in our life. We don't look at those enough. We're losing a lot of our worth, like I said before, and our spirituality to this virtual world. So we need to be connected. I don't mean on a computer, I mean with people. I see just less and less of that as time goes on. So that's my best guess as to why depression is on the rise. And it is everywhere. But it's a bad name for what it is, John. And you know why? But you hear depression, what do you think? I'm sad.
Right, right. Yeah, they say they try to connect sadness, like sadness is the same as depression. Go ahead, define that. That's an excellent point. Excellent point.
Right, thank you. And it's not. Depression is really the worst word for this thing. Let's call it a thing. Let's call it a serial killer. Let's call it an emotional illness. Because sometimes you're not sad. You just don't feel like doing anything. You don't want to go to work anymore. You don't want to get out of bed. You don't feel like you fit in anywhere. I have no purpose anymore. Life is not what I thought it would be. This sucks. Where am I going? Everybody's got it better than me. The comparing starts. But that doesn't always negate sadness. It negates being tired of things. I'm just tired of this. Then you have people with terminal illnesses in so much pain. They're depressed because they can't do nothing about that. And, they might commit suicide as well because they just can't take it. But that pain, like I spoke about earlier, the emotional pain of depression that causes someone to kill themselves or pushes them over that line doesn't always negate being sad. So we can misdiagnose depression by thinking, well, I'm not sad, so I don't think I'm depressed. I hear that a lot. Many times, many clients come in and we start talking, we get to know each other, and they have depression. They're like, I never thought I had depression. I'm not sad. But they have all the other symptoms, the interest in being with others, the lack of interest in getting out of bed, like I said, or overeating, undereating, substance abuse, way up on the rise. Okay, and you know that better than I do too. Obviously, suicide or substance abuse related. A lot of substance abusers do kill themselves either accidentally or intentionally because they get caught up in that web of they're not thinking anymore. Their judgment's out the window too. It's a very sad thing. So, finding our purpose in substances and in virtual realities is what I really think is the cause of the rise in depression. We don't have those values anymore like we used to. Okay, yeah, time goes on. It's a new day. It's a new era. We know that. But these are human needs. You can't replace them with virtual substitutes. And that's all they are, substitutes. It's fake self-esteem, John. You can't get it online like we started this with children.
No, you can't. You can't. Self-esteem has to come from self. You can't get it from anybody else. It has to come from self. That's why it's called self-esteem, and of course I wrote that theory, a zillion years ago, but that's the bottom line. Now, the other part of it that you brought up, it's very, very important is, and you brought it up to me the other day when we were talking about this, is how people are affected if somebody says they don't look good, especially younger people, younger girls, I think this mostly affects. If somebody says they're ugly or they don't look good or they feel their picture isn't good enough online or something like that. I mean, if I had a dollar for every time I heard that when I was in practice, you hear it all the time. I mean, you get this beautiful girl, or very good looking girl in front of you, and she's telling you, well, why are you ask her why you're here. She's here because I feel really depressed because I'm ugly.
Yes.
Hey, you're not ugly, you know what I mean? And then it starts like that,
Absolutely right. How many very attractive people, men and women, I've seen? It's like they come in and say they don't feel pretty, they don't feel wanted, they don't feel attractive, like you said. Look at them. Are you kidding me? What mirror are you looking at? What mirror are you possibly looking at? You could tell. I tell my clients all the time too. You can hear it a million times from a million different people, but if you don't believe it, if you're not letting it in, just don't, you're not hearing it. It's not, they're just saying that. They're making it up. That's fine. That's a parental thing as well too. I think is a big piece of that, raising a child with a healthy self, and it is self-esteem. But they say happiness is an inside job, and it is an inside job.
It's an inside job, happiness.
It certainly is. So, but we're looking for it, I think, in all the wrong places right now. That's exactly what I believe is happening, and that's what's not helping the suicide situation. It's just exacerbating the depression. We have depression everywhere. I know 6-year-old kids on antidepressants. Why is this happening? And I truly believe, and I said it in Social Side, that it's technology based. If you follow the timeline, and I started it, I think it began around 78, according to my research, and in Social Side. That's when it started to decline. Television shows started to change, and this and that started to change. We stopped being around families as much. A lot of things just changed socially and in the world. We were substituting.
Social Side is such a good book, and I love the way you served it up. Social Side, why or how America's loving itself to death. Why America's loving itself to death, and then we get into, all this addiction, if you will, to seeing ourselves, online, or seeing ourselves over here, getting all these selfies or whatever, and it creates an addiction, and as we know, because you're a licensed addiction counselor in New Jersey, alcohol and drug addiction counselor in New Jersey. I mean, the bottom line is that, if you do enough booze, you do enough drugs, you're going to become depressed. Or if you're depressed, eventually you'll probably do more drugs and booze. So, I mean, it's just the demon. It's just the, as you said, serial killer, the animal that we're trying to define. We're trying to unwrap the mystery of. We're trying to, identify and alert people who are possibly suffering from symptoms about, what could happen to them. And you should talk about that. Talk about the impulsiveness. You brought that up the other day, of suicide, and how it can happen like that. I mean, it can happen in an instant.
And it does, and that's a very big missing piece as to what defines that person who will take, in that instant, say, enough, I'm done. And now they say it's a coward's way out. I don't believe that. I think I don't believe that. I mean, I don't know what it takes to do that, but I don't think it's being a coward. I think you're very lost. It's a very lost person, and a very, very person in need, and that's there is the demon. What are we not doing or identifying to help curb this appetite for that impulsive, I'm just checking out? Especially children's minds are nowhere near developed. There's the guy, the 11-year-old who shot himself the other day on Zoom, or in classroom on Zoom. This is heartbreaking. What is going on here? And these children they don't know what the kids know. That impulsiveness, kids are very impulsive. They're all about their ego, or the id. They want what they want, and
Right.
whatever they're doing it is very sad and needs to be addressed. Adults as well, what pushes financially that will push someone over the edge sometimes. They just see no way out. I think that in a very general way, that's the problem. They don't see a way out. There's no hope. I don't feel any hopefulness for myself. So what I'm hoping to diagnose or find out or profile, as you might call it, is what can we do to identify more and give people that hope so they can be more aware of, like, my child's in a danger zone, or I'm going into a danger zone, or my loved one is going into a danger zone. What is that magic chemistry? And it's not just a pill. I mean, a pill it helps, I guess, for some. And we could talk about my depression if you want another time or whenever, but I've been through this mess. I've been through it all, and there is hope. Things do change. But how do we get that message out there to people? I mean, it's very tough, especially these days, because it's very hard to encourage people during, this isolative period. Holidays coming up, very, very historically high rate of suicides around Christmas in general.
Yeah, the holidays and suicide.
This year, I don't know. Well, God help us not to have a pandemic of suicide, but I'll be with us. It's a very, very scary time of year. So my hope is looking for how to encourage people to feel there is a way out, and find that way out. There is hope, and I can speak to a person, like I said.
And the other part of it is what a lot of people don't understand. Well, first of all, getting back to how do we get the message out? Just what you're doing, Leo. You're getting the message out right now. We have a lot of people that have subscribed to us. We have a lot of fans out there, and it's about time we start to unwrap the mystery of this thing, or this serial killer called depression. Death's best friend, one of Death's best friends, because it's killing a lot of people and a lot of kids. Okay, so you're getting the message out there, and that's what's important. The other thing is, what happens here, we call them cognitive distortions in the field, right? But really what they are thoughts, folks. They're thoughts, okay? And just a layman's term, thoughts, these are dysfunctional thoughts that are thought distortions that are coming out of left field. They hold no water. They mean nothing. But thoughts do what? They create your feelings. So if you're your biggest critic, okay, if you're that little bullshitter in your head, and you're listening to them, and that's filling you with all this negativity, right? You have to believe those thoughts are not true and they don't hold any water. Because if you believe it and you go with it, those thoughts will only compound. They will only get worse. And you said something earlier before we went on tonight. You said, John, these folks are in so much pain, and it's even physical pain from this depression. They're overwhelmed by this darkness and this cloak. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. They feel hopeless. They feel worthless. They don't know where to run. So then they kill themselves, okay? So it's trying to identify, some of the signs, like I brought up to you. I had a couple of clients, and we were able to intervene in time. But one warning sign is if you have a loved one and a child searching the internet, looking at the best way to kill themselves, which is the less painless suicide there is, which is the least painful way I can kill myself. And there's websites out there with this information on. But that's a warning sign. That's a warning sign.
Isn't it?
Yeah. And another warning sign is, the best predictor of a suicide attempt is a past suicide attempt. But I know you have more than I have. So go ahead, talk about some of the other stuff, like them, talking with other people about, or giving stuff, whatever you got there.
There's a school of thought that says there's a genetic factor to suicide, and there possibly is. We always have to look for that. If there's suicide in a family system, like addiction, you have to look for that as well. But I do think there's a something. But there's a we've seen suicides through generations. Okay, so something is right about that. Um, it's also there's other factors as well. It's just not feeling good enough. It's financial. It's not feeling like you fit in. It's not feeling like you look good enough, or you speak well enough. You don't make enough money. You don't go on enough vacation. I mean, you just talking about that voice in the back of our heads. Who is that voice? We're that voice. I believe that but thoughts have more power over and you could turn those thoughts into positive thoughts. This is where the work comes in with my clients too, though, John, and with myself when I went through this. You start telling yourself good stuff, man. You might feel good in the beginning. It's a little fun. What the hell is that? But how much time are you going to spend beating the shit out of yourself, like you said, instead of giving yourself good. I'm good enough. I do. I'm going to be, I'm with good people. I can walk, I can talk, and whatever it is you can do. I have positive things. I have other people in my life. You got to look for this stuff, though, instead of feeding the nonsense and feeding that little beast. And I talk about that, I think, in Sold Out as well, because that's a lot about spirituality. I don't care what God you're praying to, but I do believe a spiritual factor is necessary here. There's so much that goes into this, John, and I think people are losing that as well. Like churches are empty, not only because of COVID, but because there's no interest in the spiritual factor anymore. Do you think that's not going to affect people not killing themselves? How does that work?
Right. And
What
and
the
the
hell?
other part of it is what's sold out. I mean, it's just such a really good read. You know what I mean? I
I made it
really
that way.
enjoyed
Thank you.
reading it. I mean, it's just a really, really good read to get away from all this researching of, all this murder and mayhem, and read a really good book like Sold Out to really balance you out, bring you down to earth,
Thank
and
you.
let's appreciate what we have. Let's give our minds a rest. Let's not be blasting off and taking off. Let's not lose sight, okay, of what we have, and not focus on what we don't have. Right? And that's spirituality. I mean, that's a big piece of spirituality. Being in the spirit of the now and yourself and other people, and it's all there. It's all there. Like you said, you don't care, who you pray to or whatever. I mean, you look at people that come into, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. I mean, so many of them, came in loaded. I mean, just really, really loaded with depression, really depressed. You know, I mean, they found some kind of higher power that helped them spiritually, and along with that, their depression started to lift because they started to socialize, like you talk about, with other human beings in rooms with other human beings. Okay,
Yeah.
and what
And the social
always,
factor.
yeah, it's a big social factor, and that
Absolutely.
goes back to social side. That goes back to social side. So both of your books actually, are on both sides of this. Okay, they're bookends for all this depression and sadness and anxiety and everything else that's in between. I mean, excellent reads. Now, when we talk about substance abuse, you know, we know, because we're in the field, that dopamine gets depleted through substance abuse. Okay, so at what point does that get depleted so much that a person starts to go into depression and go into a severe depression, right? So now when you're looking at that, a lot of people that are depressed start to medicate. Okay, and so when they start to medicate, they a lots of times use central nervous system depressants. It really doesn't matter whether you start central nervous system depressants or central nervous system stimulants, because either one goes back to dopamine and depletes dopamine.
Yeah.
And the more dopamine you deplete, the more you're going to head more towards the depression. So what I'm trying to say is, and see if you agree with this, if you have a psychological depression, a mental health diagnosis going in that you're depressed, and you start to medicate with booze like Anthony Bourdain. Okay, now here's a guy that was recovering for many years from heroin. This is a man that drank. Now, I don't know if drinking did anything to him, did nothing to him, didn't help him, hurt him, whatever. But all I know is if you have a psychological depression that you're dealing with, and you are going to ingest a pharmacological central nervous system depressant, you might feel good for an hour or two, but man, I'm going to tell you, the next day or so or week, you've depleted dopamine, and that depression
That's
is going to be much
right.
worse.
You know what? And the way antidepressants work, in a nutshell, is sometimes our serotonin and our endorphins get sucked up too fast through the reuptake receptors. Well, antidepressants kind of shrink that tube. That makes sense. So it stays put in the reserves longer, like it's supposed to. Now, if you're drinking or drugging,
Going right out.
you're on empty. You're running on empty all the time. That's why you got to keep using and using and using. Forget about using prescription antidepressants if you're doing that. You're wasting your time. So yeah, and that's a bad place to be when those reserves are depleted. That's really the scary danger zone, I think, as far as suicide too. I think, and things fill them up other than drugs. We know that. Doing good things, being involved in something, exercising is big. Whatever it is you do, praying, singing, do something. Those reserves, but you got to do the work too. No magic pill. There's no magic potion.
Yeah, no potion. No potion. No magic potion.
There's so much to talk about with this, John. I really appreciate you giving this some airtime and then bringing this topic up.
Well, I'll tell you what, I hope, and it probably is, today's part one, and we'll set up part two, because there's just so much to cover on depression. Okay. And, the mystery of it is this the unseen serial killer? Okay. Like opiate addiction, being a serial killer. I mean, gambling can even be considered, a major player, because, I think it's 20% of compulsive gamblers commit suicide or have suicide attempts. Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. It's off the walls, and that concerns me because today, the casino is as far away from you as your computer. I mean, you can get online and gamble right online, and if you want to compare it, that's like not snorting cocaine, but getting on crack. I mean, you're on the express. If you start to, your living room becomes your casino, you're in trouble. Okay, you're in trouble.
Right?
And there's 20% of all gamblers have pretty much, I'm pretty sure it's suicide attempts or contemplate suicide, but there is a high number of suicides that take place in compulsive gambling. There's no question about it. So we got to keep researching this. We got to keep looking this over. I want us to do some more of these. I mean, this is really something that's been bothering me for a while. You're the expert on it. Again, if you want to get in touch with Leo, it's leojbatt at AOL.com, or it's Leo Battenhausen at psychologytoday.com, or it's Good Therapy, Leo Battenhausen today.com. I mean, you can get Leo at all if you need to talk to him. You might want to pick up one of his books and read it before you do call him. Definitely worth the price. And those are Social Side and sold out. And you can buy them at Amazon and wherever fine books are sold, right, Leo? Excellent. Listen, buddy, thank you so much. It was
My
great seeing you
pleasure.
today. I am
Thank you,
thrilled
John.
having you on. I miss you, and
I miss you.
hopefully we're going to be doing more of these. And in fact, I'll bet on it. Okay.
I'm looking forward to it as well, John. That's great. I miss you too, my friend.
Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day. And
You
to our
do this.
fans out there, thank you so much. Make it a great day. Stay safe. Be well. God bless. Thank you.